There's an interesting situation, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this, Stu, because you still have young kids. My kids are grown now, and so they don't do a lot of sleepovers. But I'm guessing that you don't. Yeah, they don't. Okay. As adults, they don't sleep over at friends' houses that often. Yeah, it's weird. But there is a thing apparently right now where a lot of parents are kind of giving second thoughts to sleepovers and not allowing them for any number of reasons. One of which, I guess, they're afraid of abuse.
Is that?
I think that's one of the things.
That's one of the reasons.
Because do you ever know for sure what's going on in somebody else's house?
No, you never know for sure. No. But again, like this seems to tie into the fact that despite the world being a statistically much safer place from crime
that it was when we were young. Yeah.
Much.
Yeah. It's true.
This is Lenore Skenazy talks about this a lot, where, that we've kind of put this bubble wrap around our kids. I'm totally guilty of this at some level.
Me too.
Where, my kids are young. And I remember when I was their age, I would just wander out. Like a summer, my mom would go to work, and I would walk to my friend's house. It was like a mile away, and we would hang out and play all day. And I'd come back. This typical story. You come back when it gets dark, and maybe have dinner, and it's just people kind of knew around the neighborhood, and people kind of kept an eye on you a little bit. But basically, we did whatever we wanted, which most of the time was eating Hostess products and playing wiffle ball. And you came back, and that was it. And my kids don't do that. Everything, like that's not. I don't let my kid walk around for a mile by himself to his friends. Like I don't do that at all. Like I know because we think this way a lot. Like I'm a guy who likes numbers. I can look at them and say, hey, I know intellectually this viewpoint makes no sense. I know it. I live in a safe area. We are in a low crime period. While we've seen it tick up, the 2020 period was a little bit different. We've seen some things.
Murder rate has gone up in some cities.
There are some problems. Obviously some drug abuse issues have risen over the years. But generally speaking, we are in a low crime period. We are in, the most profound example of this is I was more than twice as likely to be killed in a mass shooting at my school when I was a kid.
Than kids are now?
Than kids are now. And that is, blows people's minds.
Yeah.
It's more than double.
Oh, wow.
When I was in high school, it was in the 90s, and crime rates were higher. And the difference between mass shootings, school shootings, I should say, back then, and now is what we see now are very disturbed kids who get guns and try to essentially take the leaderboard on their video game, right? They come in and they decide they're going to try to kill as many people as possible. So we see mass shootings. What we saw in the 90s were 2 or 3 people being shot in a fight. We saw people, gangs, bring guns to school, but it wasn't as much, it wasn't 20 or 30 people dying, but people were shot at school all the time back in the 90s. It just wasn't noticed as much. And I find it hard to believe that a mom in the 90s who loses their kid because one person was shot at their school feels any, better about it than someone today who loses their kid in a mass shooting. But what this also means is more schools go without any shootings at all. Far more schools, when you look at the percentage of schools, go without mass shootings, because when we do see a shooting, it's usually one of these larger spectacle type shootings, people looking for attention. And look, that's a whole other problem that's really difficult to solve. But the bottom line is, when you send your kids to school in today's era, they are much more likely to survive and not be shot.
Yeah, and they've taken a lot of precautions too, the schools. They're usually locked. It's usually much, much harder to get in.
Yeah, that wasn't the case back in the day.
It used to be you just walked into a school and you went to the principal's office if you needed, to give a note to your child or bring them something that they needed, medication or whatever. And you were not stopped or asked or frisked or
no security guards,
no security at all.
Yeah,
it's a much different situation.
If there was a fight that broke out in a school, like the gym teachers coming down the hallway to help break it up, like that's how that's how it worked. That's not how it works now.
No.
So it is in some ways it's so much better. And the sleepover thing I think is part of this. Like we hear these big these terrible stories, and they do happen, but generally speaking, these rates are a lot lower than they used to be. And that's positive.
Yeah.
We don't need to bubble wrap our kids as much as we do.
But one of the concerns, apparently, in addition to the abuse, if you don't know the parents really well, and do you really know anybody well enough to trust your kids to be there overnight? I don't know. I don't know, because you just never know.
It's so funny. We just talked about this.
I know.
And it's not logical.
It's not.
It's not logical.
It's not. But here's how illogical I am. My daughter, my youngest daughter, was 16. So this was a few years ago, because she's 22 now. But when she was 16, she wanted to walk down. My wife wasn't home, and so she came in to me and said, "I'm going to go down to the pond. We've got a pond like half a block from the house." She just wanted to go down there and hang out. I don't know, throw rocks or whatever she was going to do at the pond. I'm like, no, you can't. No.
Wait, 16? She couldn't go to the pond
16,
half a block away?
Half a block away. No, I don't want you at the pond, because who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm illogical that way.
I am too.
I'm not sure why, because logically, I do know that the crime rate is much lower. And, what are the chances of her being kidnapped or whatever at 16?
Very low.
It's low.
Very low.
Really, really low.
I think part of this is, I know this is, I'll speak for myself here. Part of it is like, I just don't want to be the one who approves the thing that goes wrong. Like, it's almost selfish in a way. Like, I know I would beat myself up till the end of time if I was like, yeah, sure, go down to the pond, and then God forbid something terrible happens. Yeah. And so you just decide, like, no, just eliminate every bit of risk from their lives. Right. That's not how to build, a healthy adult,
No,
right? I think we're seeing the effects of that. And so I do try, when I realize this instinct to myself, I try to cure it in real time. My kids do sleepovers.
They do?
Yeah, they do. We haven't stopped that. Although I have noticed there is some hesitance among parents now. I'm not in the parents groups as much as my wife, but occasionally she talks to me about this, that she's talking to one of her friends, and they don't really like to do sleepovers with their kids. And again, these are people that are friends, and a lot of times that they know, and I would think trust, but there's a hesitance. And I think we just kind of jump to the worst case scenario a lot.
Yeah, we do. And according to this article, it's pretty prevalent now where parents say no to sleepovers like
really?
This. Yeah, they're worried about, not only are they worried about crime, but they're worried about whether or not the people have guns in their home and whether they're locked away safe or whatever. So there's a gun fear.
Let's say I'm a liberal. And my kid wants to sleep over at Pat Gray's house. Pat Gray's probably a gun.
I got guns.
He's got them all over the place.
Well,
they're probably laying all over the counter.
Of course. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I leave them out on the kitchen counter.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
AR-15s out there and a couple of 9mm.
Right. They're just hanging out if you go to like the dog toy basket, there's just an AR-15 in there, and I don't want my kid in that environment. That's kind of the stuff you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
What else? Is there any other concerns?
COVID exposure.
Okay. So, all right. So I'm a COVID zero guy. I'm wearing a mask. I'm wearing 3 masks to the gym.
Right.
And then I'm coming home, and I don't want my kid, because you, as a evil conservative, are probably just...
Well, not only do I have guns, I've got the COVID virus that's just in Petri dishes all over the house. All over the house.
And you add it as like a seasoning on each meal.
Yes.
You're just, instead of salt, you're sprinkling on COVID.
Yeah. Also, are there alcohol or drugs in the home?
Okay. Because that's true. Like some people have alcohol in their house. Some people have it and make sure that it's protected from their kids. And others might just have a open liquor cabinet that
might. Yeah.
I remember this back in the day. There were kids that their parents, would drink, drank alcohol, and they'd had their ways of drinking some while the parents were at work and filling the bottle back up with water and trying to cover it, and that stuff happened. That was a real thing.
Yep. What about older siblings? Is that a consideration? Do they have older siblings where something could happen?
Right. Okay, I can see that.
Right?
Oh my God, I'm never letting my kids sleep over anywhere. Why are you scaring me like this?
No, I know.
Again, I think there's appropriate. You do have to think about these things as a parent. I think that one of the big things is, do you trust that other parent? Is the parent going to be home?
Can they keep you safe?
Are they going to make sure things don't go awry?
Right.
In the middle of the night, you want your kids sneaking out and vandalizing the neighborhood, right? That you want to make sure that they actually stay in the house. Maybe especially when they're younger, that they actually go to bed at a decent hour. Like, we've had our kids sleep over their friends' houses a couple times, and they come back and like, you stayed up till like 2 a.m. now, didn't you? I can tell because you're a different person today, and you look like you went on a bender for 6 weeks. So you got to get that sense of not every parent has the same standards as you. Like, my kid, they're going to go to bed basically at the same time every night. It's not going to be too late.
And speaking of that, some parents apparently have come to a compromise where you can stay there till, late, like 10 or 11, midnight.
Yeah, and then go pick them up.
And go get them. Yeah, that's they call that a half over.
A half over?
Mm-hmm. Or a late over. Stupid.
You're a weird group of people, aren't we?
Oh, man. It's amazing. So, but I just find it interesting because apparently a lot of people have just decided it's not worth it. And so they just say no, just because they don't want to mess with any of the risk. Who knows what could happen? Maybe nothing, but I'm not going to take the chance, which kind of makes sense to me, being a probably oversensitive parent to those kinds of things as I am.